Hi, I'm Deidre, otherwise known as Miss Goat Lover from Gyra Provisions Homestead, and today we are going to talk about water kefir. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a informational / tutorial on what water kefir is and why we use it, how to make it, and just a little bit of cautionary things to look for with it as well. So what is water kefir? Water kefir is a fermented drink, and what that means is that you have what's called the water kefir grains, and they are submerged into a sugar water that the water kefir grains eat, and it turns the water into a fermented drink. And when something is fermented, it creates a good bacteria, and the good bacteria is what you want inside of your gut, and it's good for gut health, immunity, and it's a probiotic as well. So a lot of people use it for like I said, to build their immunity. Some people like to use it just as an alternative to soda, because the more you let it ferment, the greater the fizz is in it as well. So how do we make it? Like I mentioned before, you have what's called water grains, and they're not actually grains like you would think with wheat. They're very small. Sometimes it can get a little bit larger, but they're small, little, clear, jelly-like substances that you can use to ferment your water. So those who might have gluten intolerances, you're able to drink this because it's not really a true grain. So let's go ahead and get started. The things that you would need to use in order to make water kefir: you would of course need your grains. You would need some type of water. A spring type water or a mineral water is good. You want to stay away from distilled water and different things like that. If you choose to use your tap water, you want to boil it first to get all the chlorine and different impurities out of it, and then let it cool. After you have water, you want to make sure you have a sugar. Some people will use raw sugar. Some people will use coconut sugar, regular sugar, and other types of sugars that are out there. Some people will use those as well. You would need some kind of strainer. A lot of people use plastic. It's recommended that you use plastic. I use what I have, which is food grade stainless steel, and seeing as how my grains won't stay in there long, I've never had a problem with it, but a lot of people recommend that you get a plastic strainer. You'll need some measuring cups because you're going to measure out your sugars. You'll need a spoon because you're going to stir, and I like to use these coffee filters. I use them, one, for when I'm fermenting my water, and two, when I get ready to ferment my actual drink that I'm going to drink, to kind of keep the lids on a little bit tighter, because even though I have my lock on top of there, it still kind of jiggles sometimes, and I don't want the air to come out. I want it to be as tight as possible so that the fermentation can keep my drink busy. And then last but not least, you're going to use some kind of juice. Some people will use fresh fruit, and I like to do that when it's in season, but in the winter time when there's not a lot of good fresh fruit out, I like to get an organic fruit juice, and I'll use that. So let's get started. The first thing first is that what you want to do is you want to have a empty vessel. You want to have a vessel with your water kefir in here already. And what you'll do is you'll take your strainer and you'll pour off your water. And the measurement for water kefir is, think everything is in quarters. You'll have a 1/4 cup of grains to a 1/4 cup of sugar to a quart of water. And if you can use those measurements and double them, triple them. For me, we make about 4 gallons of these within probably about within a week. We go through water kefir a lot in our house. So you want to make sure you get all your kefir grains out, mainly because one thing that you don't want to do is stir your kefir grains when you get ready to stir in your sugar water, because that can sometimes cause your sugar grains to get smaller and disintegrate. So anyway, so you have those in here, and this is your fermented water. This is what you're going to add your juice to in a minute. And if you see, in here are your kefir grains. And I'm not sure if you can get close to it enough, but if you look, they're just kind of like little jelly-like substances, and they can change color sometimes depending on the type of sugar that you use. If you use a dark sugar, some people even use molasses sometimes. If you use a dark sugar, your grains will become dark. Sometimes people use a coconut water, and it can cause your grains to turn pink or whatever color the coconut water is. If you use a regular processed white sugar, you will end up with more of a very clear type kefir grain. Mine come out kind of beige sometimes because of the raw sugar that I use. So you'll have that in there, and then you'll take about a gallon of water, and remember the measurements are a 1/4 cup of grains, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and a quart of water. So since I'm using a gallon, what I'll have is a gallon of water, a whole cup of sugar, and a whole cup of grains. Some people like to wash out their jugs. It's not necessary unless you start to see an overgrowth in yeast, and you'll notice that because it'll start to get kind of slimy or brown, and it'll even smell yeasty after a while. And you can measure. I don't, because I've been making it for so long, I kind of know where to stop. And that's about good there. You'll take your sugar next. Some people like to warm up their water to make the sugar dissolve a lot faster, but I just like to give it a stir. It does just fine that way. So about a cup of sugar. And you'll stir that. Now again, you want to make sure that you get all your grains out of here, because this agitation will actually start to break up your grains a little bit and cause them to get pretty small. So just stir, stir, stir. Or again, like I said, you can put the water on the stove and then put the sugar in it, just enough to dissolve it. You want to make sure that if you decide to go that route, that you make sure that your water comes down to temperature to about 80 degrees or lower, because you don't want to scald your grains. So after that, you get your grains. One thing that I like to do, because my grains multiply quickly, is I like to measure them out just to make sure that I have a cup of grains in here, because if you have too many grains in here, it'll ferment very quickly and it'll get yeasty. So you want to kind of make sure that you have about a cup of grains in here. So I'll measure these out really quickly. I I usually have a smaller spoon to work with these. Okay, so you have about a cup of grains, and you go ahead and stick them in there. And you leave them to ferment. You can, depending on how warm you keep your home, the more warm that you keep your home, the faster this will ferment. So you want to make sure that your home is about maybe about 70 degrees is a really good temperature. 70, 80 maybe at the most. I know that's pretty high for a lot of people. But you want to make sure your grains stay warm. And you want to keep them out of the sunlight, preferably someplace dark if you can, but absolutely out of the sunlight. So this is done. Very easy, quick to do, and now you're ready to go. Now you can tell when it's time for you to empty out your water. Usually you want to ferment anywhere between 24 to 48 hours. Some people might go a little bit longer depending on how you like your drink. You can do two things to see if it's ready. One, you can taste it. If it still tastes like sugar, it's not completely fermented, unless that's what you like. Or you can kind of look at the color. If you notice, mine is a little bit darker compared to the kefir water that's been fermented already. So now the next thing that you want to do is go ahead and get your juice. And as you see, I have a lot of grains left over. This was probably just within a couple of days that these doubled like that. So now you want to go ahead and get your juice. And again, everything is in quarters. So now that I have a gallon of water for my juice, I'm going to use a cup of juice. And that is going to sit for another, depending on how warm it gets in my house, anywhere between 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes when it's already pretty much bubbly like this, I don't have to let it sit for a long time. Now you can go ahead and drink it right away. It kind of will have the taste of like a Kool-Aid almost. It'll have more of a juice taste. But if you're going more for the fizzy, like how this is right now, you probably want to let it sit just for a little bit, and you can taste it off and on to kind of see if it's at the fizz that you like. Word of caution, the longer you let it go, the more it ferments, it will start to kind of turn into an alcohol. So you want to make sure that your, I lost my top. I'll use this one. You want to make sure that you're tasting it to make sure that it's not overly fermented. So I have a lot of people ask me, can people with diabetes drink it? Yes, because it'll eat up all of the sugar. Can you feed it to your children? Yes, as long as you don't let it over ferment and turn into an alcohol. My kids drink it all the time. Sometimes I even use this to make a sports drink for them. They're swimmers, so I will add different minerals to it or different things like that to the water as it ferments and use it as a sports drink. So you have that. When we go on trips, things that I like to use are these flip top bottles. I go ahead and fill this up and put the top on there and put it in a cooler. Because what you want to do is make sure that after it has fermented to what you like, you want to put it in the refrigerator or somewhere that is cool so that it doesn't continue to ferment. And you want to make sure that you open it up every now and then so that it doesn't explode, because it will explode. The gases and everything, the fermentation will cause it to build up, and if it doesn't have anywhere to go, it will explode. So make sure that if you're using any kind of bottles, you want to make sure every now and then you just what we call burp them. So these are really good for traveling. I like to use these. If you want to play it safe, you can get yourself a fermentation kind of jar or setup This is just a plain mason jar. You have a top, and all of the gases can come out through here. You don't have to worry about burping or anything like that if you get this. They also sell them where you can use a big jug, and they'll have a top for it, a little small top that you put in there, and you can use this as well. You can usually go to like your breweries and different things like that. So I think that's really about it. I have a big mess that I need to clean up, but I wanted to kind of just show you what all I do. I'll be making this one pretty soon as well, and that's really about it. If you have any questions, please you can contact us on our website and our contact page, and just put in water keeper questions. And I'll hopefully be selling these pretty soon for a very, very minimal price, because I make so much of them I don't want to give them away. Well, I don't want to throw them away. Also, really quickly before I go, things that you can use these extras for is you can use them in your garden, you can give them to your pets, you can put them in smoothies, you can put them in yogurt, you can eat them just by themselves. So these are really good to have around your extras. You can find all kinds of uses for them. So until next time, I want to say thank you for hanging with me this long. I hope you have fun. If you have water kefir, you can use all kinds of flavors and just have a great time with it. Thanks. See you guys later. Bye.